They didn't slam the door when they left. They just locked it and walked away. No warning. No goodbye. Just a note taped to the front door like I was some leftover detail in my own story. 2 days after they disappeared, the house went up in flames. I wasn't even there. Didn't step inside, didn't touch a thing. But when the cops came around, my stepdad pointed the finger at me. Said I was unstable. And my mom? She just stood there, quiet, letting it happen. I was 15. My parents split when I was 6. There weren't any fights or flying dishes, no big scene. Just two adults quietly deciding they had enough. I stayed with mom during the week since her place was closer to school, then spent weekends at dad's. It worked fine, for a while. But around 10, things started to drift. Not overnight, more like a slow fade. Mom stopped asking how my day went. She couldn't remember the names of my friends anymore. The drawings I'd made disappeared from the fridge. Bit by bit, I turned into background noise like static from a TV no one bothered to shut off. Then came Richard. I was 12 when he showed up. One of those smooth-talking guys who could win over a crowd without even trying, perfect haircut, polished grin, always telling stories that made him sound like somebody important. Depending on who he talked to, he was either in real estate, hotel management, or running some big operation. He'd bring wine, name-drop people in high places, and treat me like a stage prop, the cute kid who made him look like family material. And I tried with him. I really did. Once, he brought me this top-tier mountain bike, shiny, loaded with more gears than I could count. Said we'd go riding together sometime. We never did. He'd mess up my hair and call me big guy, like I was still in kindergarten. I was 13. Richard had 2 boys, Evan and Noah, 10 and 8. They were quiet, almost mechanical. Little soldiers with perfect manners, yes, sir. No, ma'am. Every time they opened their mouths. Mom loved them instantly. You could see it in her face how she glowed when Evan asked for help with his homework, or how she bragged about Noah being so polite. And with me? Nothing I did ever seemed good enough. Too loud. Too stubborn. Too me. One night, not long after they started coming around, Mom told me to eat in the kitchen because the boys need some quiet family time with Richard. I stood there, holding my plate, listening to them laugh in the next room. That's when it hit me, I wasn't part of her picture anymore. By 14, I was crashing at Dad's more often. He wasn't emotional or flashy, but he was steady. He never made me feel like I had to earn his love. We'd sit on the couch, watching Bulls games without saying much. And somehow, those quiet nights felt warmer than anything I'd ever gotten at Mom's. Then Richard popped the question, and Mom said yes. Can't say I was surprised. Honestly, my first thought was, well, guess this is it now. Once they tied the knot, everything that used to feel like mine slowly started disappearing. My bedroom? Swapped out for the smaller one so Evan and Noah could have the bigger space. My posters vanished. My things were packed into boxes and shoved out into the garage like old clutter no one cared about. No one asked me how I felt. No one even looked my way. One night, I finally asked her straight up, "Do you even want me here anymore?" She laughed light, dismissive, like I just told a bad joke. "Oh, don't be so sensitive," she said, smiling in that breezy, distracted way of hers. But her eyes said something else. They didn't say I love you. They said don't make things harder. By then, I was 15, old enough to know that silence can hit harder than any words. I started to feel like a guest in my own home, the kind of guest you keep around out of politeness, not love. And yeah, I know some kids go through worse. But there's a special kind of sting when your own mother looks right through you, like you're just part of the wallpaper. That kind of emptiness doesn't fade. It clings. Around that time, Richard started dropping these business-sounding phrases, streamlining our finances, consolidating under one name, things like that. He said it'd make everything easier, more efficient. And that's when he first mentioned the lake house. It was a Thursday, I remember that part like it's tattooed on my brain. Everything else around it feels like static. Not because it didn't matter, but because my mind just didn't know where to put it. You ever have a moment that feels like it's happening in someone else's life? That's what this was for me. I came home from school expecting the usual, maybe some leftover pasta in the fridge, maybe Richard pacing the kitchen with his Bluetooth headset, pretending to close some big deal, maybe Mom half-focused at her laptop, drowning in emails but too proud to admit it. But instead, the front door was locked. That was the first sign something was off. We never locked the door during the day. It was that kind of neighborhood. People left their garages open, waved at each other from driveways. At first, I figured they'd just gone out. Groceries, dry cleaning, something quick. But then I saw it. A plain white sheet of printer paper, taped dead center on the front door like a missing pet flyer. My name scrawled across the top in Mom's handwriting, rushed, uneven, but definitely hers. Caleb, we decided to leave for a spontaneous week at the lake house. Stay safe. Mom. That was it. I just stood there. Read it once. Then again. Like maybe if I stared hard enough, the words would rearrange themselves into something that actually made sense. I checked under the doormat. Peeked in the mailbox. Looked around, half expecting a camera crew to pop out yelling, "Surprise!" Like I'd stumbled into some cruel prank. But there was nothing. Just that one note. No text. No voicemail. No quick, "Hey, sweetheart, just so you know." Nothing. They were just gone. I pulled out my phone and called. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. Over and over, I must have hit redial a dozen times. I even kept count, like some desperate part of me thought that if I just called enough, maybe it'd undo whatever was happening. But it didn't. No answer. No sign of life. And that's when the silence stopped feeling normal. And started feeling dangerous. Like the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. I just stood there for a while, 10, maybe 15 minutes, frozen in place. Didn't cry. Didn't shout. Just stood there. It was like my body was lagging behind what my brain already knew. Eventually, I tried the garage code, just to double-check. The door lifted, and I saw right away both cars were gone. Richard's precious sedan, the one he treated like a Porsche, and Mom's SUV, the one she called her baby, even though he was the one footing the bill. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd made a choice. I wasn't overlooked. I was left behind on purpose. And I couldn't bring myself to go inside after that. Maybe because it didn't feel like home anymore. Maybe because I couldn't face walking into a space that had room for everyone else but somehow none for me. So I turned around. Started walking down the street like I actually had somewhere to be. Caught the bus, then hopped off at the train station. That's when I called Dad. He didn't pick up at first. It rang, went to voicemail. But a couple minutes later, my phone lit up. "You okay?" he asked. I didn't even know what to say. I think all that came out was, "Can I stay with you for a few days?" Next thing I knew, I was on a train, watching the city smear past the windows. Then the elevator. Then that familiar hallway. And finally, his door. The same loft with the old brick walls and that faint, nostalgic smell that always reminded me of the 90s. He opened the door, looked me up and down once, and said, "You're always welcome here." That was it. No grilling. No awkward hug. Just those words. That night, he ordered pizza from the same place we used to go when I was little. Plain cheese, garlic crust. He still remembered. We sat on the couch, Bulls game on mute, the room dim and quiet. I just stared at the wall, holding a slice I never even took a bite from. After a while, he asked softly, "You want to tell me what happened?" I shook my head. He didn't push. Just sat there. That's the thing about my dad, even silence with him felt safe. But eventually, the dam broke. And once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I told him about the note taped to the door. How the house was locked like I was some stranger. How I called over and over and got nothing. How I stood there alone while they were probably up at the lake house, eating steak, roasting marshmallows, pretending everything was perfect. Then I stopped talking about what happened and started talking about how it felt. I told him I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere anymore. That I'd become this long-term guest no one wanted to tell to leave. How Richard always made me feel like I was in the way. How Mom used to light up when I walked into a room and now barely looked up from her laptop. I told him Evan and Noah hardly spoke to me. That everything shifted the second Richard showed up. And that Mom didn't fight for me. She just went along with it. She doesn't even ask how my day was, I said, staring down at the crust in my hand. Not once. She just assumes I'm fine unless Richard complains about me. Then suddenly I'm the problem. Dad didn't say a word. Just listened. So I kept going. She redid the whole living room after he moved in, new couch, new curtains. My school photos? Packed away in boxes. Now there's a framed picture of Evan on the piano, and it's not even his damn piano. I laughed, but it came out sharp and bitter. And now this, I said. They just leave me behind like it's normal. Like I don't even exist to them anymore. Dad nodded slowly. That's not okay. No, I said, my voice cutting a little harder than I meant. It's not. And I'm done pretending it is. He leaned back and exhaled, long and steady. You want to stay here a while? He asked. Longer than a few nights? I nodded. Yeah. I do. All right, he said. Then we'll figure it out. And man. I wish that's where things ended. Me finally speaking up. Dad, solid and steady, just like always. But life doesn't wrap things up in neat little bows. Not when people like Richard are still in the picture. And not when the lies haven't even started yet. 2 days. That's how long the calm lasted before everything turned upside down. When I left Mom's house that Thursday, after finding the note, after calling her a dozen times with no answer, I never went inside. Didn't touch the doorknob. Didn't cross the threshold. I just stood there, staring at that note one last time, letting the weight of it sink in, and then I walked away. I went to Dad's like I'd done 100 times before. Only this time, it wasn't just another weekend visit. This time, it was supposed to be different. Safe. A place to breathe again. But that peace didn't last. By Sunday morning, everything changed. I was in the kitchen digging through a cabinet for cereal when Dad's phone rang. He stepped out into the hallway to take it, nothing unusual, until I heard his voice shift. Low. Controlled. Too careful. When he came back, his face looked wrong, pale and stiff, like someone had hit pause on him mid-thought. Caleb, he said quietly, we need to talk. And just like that, my stomach dropped. There was a fire, he said, keeping his voice calm. At your mom's house. Late last night. I just stared at him. My throat went dry, my tongue like sandpaper. No one was hurt, he added quickly. But the house, it's bad. I nodded slowly. That old place, with the crooked stair rail, the squeaky tiles, the living room where my drawings once hung, was gone. And before I could even wrap my head around it, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers stood there. Not hostile, not rude, just that overly polite, steady kind that somehow makes everything feel worse. Like they already know how this conversation ends. They started with routine questions. Where had I been Friday night? Here, I said. With my dad. Anyone who can verify that? Yeah, him. We were here all night. One officer wrote something in his notepad. Then came the next one. Did you return to your mother's house at any point after Thursday afternoon? No, I said. Didn't even go inside on Thursday. Saw the note, left. That's all. They both nodded, but the air shifted, heavier, tighter. And then one of them said it, the line that made the floor tilt under me. We received a statement saying there was some tension between you and your stepfather. That you were upset about not being included on the trip. That you might have made threats. What? I blinked. No. That's not. Wait, who said that? They didn't answer. Just thanked me for my time and said they'd follow up if needed. When the door closed, Dad let out a deep, tired breath like he'd been holding it since the call. I turned to him. Let me guess. Richard. He didn't have to confirm it. His silence said enough. Later that night, Dad made a call to an old buddy from his city planning days, someone with friends in the fire department. Just to find out what was being said. And sure enough, it was Richard. He'd already gone to the police. Already spinning his story. Said the family had come back from the lake house late Friday night just for a few things and that the fire started a few hours later. Told them I'd been angry, jealous, unstable. That I'd made threats. He was already setting the stage. And my own mother? She didn't lift a finger to stop him. He told the cops I'd been angry. Said I felt left out. That I stormed off in some kind of rage. Claimed I had a pattern of emotional outbursts. He built a whole story, the jealous stepson, bitter and unstable, maybe angry enough to set fire to the house. But he left out everything that mattered. He didn't mention that I never even went inside. Didn't mention the 12 calls that went unanswered. Didn't mention the silence that followed every single one. And my mom? She didn't say a word. Didn't speak up. Didn't defend me. Didn't even whisper, "That's not who Caleb is." She just let it happen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there on Dad's couch, staring at the ceiling while the muted glow of the TV flickered across the room. The Bulls game was on, same couch, same show, same walls, but everything felt different. The peace that place used to hold, it was gone. Replaced by something heavy. Off. Like the world had tilted just enough to throw everything out of balance. And it wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was the realization that I already knew what was coming next. The whispers. The stares. Those quiet, careful looks people give when they're trying to decide if the rumor might be true. Funny thing, it wasn't the fire that broke me. Wasn't the cops knocking on the door like they already had their minds made up. Wasn't even Richard's lies. It was her silence. That hollow, echoing silence that said more than any accusation ever could. That's when everything clicked like a puzzle I never wanted to finish. Richard wasn't just trying to control me. He was trying to erase me. And my mom? She didn't try to stop him. She just stood there and let it happen. It was sometime past midnight when my phone lit up. I was lying on the couch, headphones in, watching some random video just to drown out the noise in my head. The screen said Mom. For half a second, I froze. Because maybe, just maybe, this was the moment she'd finally be my mom again. Maybe she'd say she was sorry. Say it was all a mistake. Say she believed me. But instead, the first words out of her mouth were, "What the hell is wrong with you?" No hesitation. No softness. Just pure, focused anger. I swear to God, Caleb, do you even understand what we're dealing with? The house is ruined. The boys are terrified. I haven't slept in 2 days. And then I find out you told the police you weren't even home? My voice came out flat. I wasn't. Exactly, she snapped. You left. You didn't even knock on the door. You just ran off like some selfish little. She caught herself mid-sentence, but the damage was already done. There was a note, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. You taped it to the door. Said you were going to the lake house. No call. No text. You didn't even ask if I was coming. You just left. For one tiny second, one breath, I thought maybe she'd hear it. Maybe she'd realize what she'd done. But then her voice came back sharper. You could have stayed behind. You could have kept an eye on things. But no, you always have to make everything about you. You disappear when things get hard. Maybe if you'd stopped sulking for once, we wouldn't be in this mess. And that was it. She flipped the whole thing. Turned the fire into my fault. Turned her absence into my failure. The worst part? She sounded like she believed it. You're blaming me? I asked, my voice cracking halfway through. You're seriously blaming me for this? I'm saying you vanished, she shot back. You live there too, Caleb. You don't just get to disappear and expect everyone else to deal with the mess. I didn't walk away, I said quietly. You locked me out. Silence. No apology. No hesitation. Just air, thick, empty, and final. And then she hit me with the line that finished off whatever hope I had left. You've always been like this, Caleb. Always playing the victim. Always making things worse than they are. You're not a kid anymore, grow up. I don't even remember who hung up first. Doesn't really matter. I just sat there, holding the phone like it was something fragile and dangerous, like it might explode if I breathed too loud. But I didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't throw it, even though a part of me wanted to watch it shatter. I just sat there in the dark, sinking deeper into the silence. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't even blink. That's what betrayal feels like when it finally settles in. Not fire. Not fury. Just cold. A quiet kind of cold that seeps into your chest and turns everything inside to ice. I didn't even notice Dad come out of his room until he was standing there in the doorway. Old t-shirt, sweatpants, rubbing the back of his neck like he wasn't sure how to step into this kind of pain. That her? He asked softly. I nodded. She blaming you? Another nod, tighter this time. He sighed and sat down next to me on the couch. Not too close, just enough that I could feel he was there. That I wasn't completely alone. I should have seen this coming, he murmured, mostly to himself. I stared at the dark TV screen. She said I left the house unprotected, I whispered. That if I'd stayed, the fire wouldn't have happened. Dad turned toward me, his jaw hard. That's complete bullshit. I blinked, surprised by how sharp he sounded. You're 15, he said, voice low but steady. You're not the man of that house. You're not her husband. You're not Richard. You're a kid, Caleb. And they left you. That was their choice. That was the first time anyone had said it that plainly. No sugarcoating. No hesitation. Just truth, solid and cutting. They didn't just leave you, he continued. They locked you out and made you think it was your fault. That's not a mistake. That's abandonment. I don't care what story she's trying to tell. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. My throat burnt not from crying, but from holding too much in for too long. Dad wasn't finished. You're not crazy, he said firmly. You're not broken. And you sure as hell aren't to blame for this. If they try to pin this on you again, if they twist the truth and make you the villain, I'll handle it. Personally. I swallowed hard, trying not to let my shoulders shake. He didn't pull me in for a hug. Didn't try to make it better. He just sat there beside me while some random video kept autoplaying on the TV, voices whispering from a world that suddenly felt far away. And for the first time in days, I felt okay. Not good. Not better. Just okay. Like maybe I wasn't standing on the edge alone anymore. And in that stillness, something finally settled in. Mom didn't see me as her son anymore. Hadn't for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to believe it. I swear to God, Caleb, Dad said after a while, voice low but shaking. No one gets to talk to you like that again. Not even her. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like he was trying to hold something back. She left you, he said slowly. She locked the damn door. Didn't check on you. Didn't ask if you were okay. Then something awful happens, something you had nothing to do with, and instead of protecting you, she blames you. She said I should have stayed to watch the house, I mumbled. Dad snapped upright, eyes sharp. You're 15, he repeated. You're not the one who's supposed to protect them. They were supposed to protect you. His voice cracked on that last word. And in that moment, something inside me thawed just a little. Enough to know he meant every word. Dad snapped upright. You're 15. Then he caught himself, took a breath, and said it again, calmer this time. 15. You're not responsible for her house. Or her husband. Or her new family. He stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight. You could almost feel the heat coming off him, not anger at me, but at everything they'd done. And for the first time, it felt like I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. She backed him up, didn't she? Dad asked, even though he already knew. She didn't say anything, I said quietly. She let Richard tell the cops I was angry. Said I had a temper. That I might have done it. Dad's jaw locked. His face went still, the kind of still that said he was holding back a storm. But the fire department ruled it accidental, right? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. Something behind the dryer, faulty outlet, bad wiring. No signs of a break-in. Nothing suspicious. And even after that, he said slowly, she still had the nerve to point the finger at you. She said I abandoned the house, I murmured. That if I cared about the family, I would have stayed and watched the place. Dad looked like he was 2 seconds away from putting a hole through the wall. She left you, Caleb, he said, his voice low but shaking with anger. She left you alone. You're a kid. She and Richard took off for some random trip without even checking in, and now she's trying to act like you're the one who failed them? He took a deep breath. Then another. You could see the restraint in his shoulders. Finally, he looked at me, steady, certain. That's enough, he said. I'm done letting this slide. He sat back down, rubbing his hands together like he was bracing himself for something big. I should have done this a long time ago, he muttered. But I kept telling myself not to stir the pot. I didn't want to make things harder for you. I gave her every chance to be decent. But she made her choice. I looked up at him. What are you saying? I'm filing for full custody, he said flatly. I'm calling the lawyer first thing in the morning. I don't care what your mom says, and I sure as hell don't care what Richard tries to spin. You're not going back there. I blinked, stunned. You mean it? More than anything, he said. I let a lot slide. I stayed quiet when she started drifting away. I kept my mouth shut when that guy moved in and acted like he owned the place. But accusing you of arson? Calling the cops on her own kid? That's not just bad judgment, that's betrayal. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath until I let it out long, shaky, like something hollowing me out from the inside. I'm gonna keep you safe, he said. Not just from what they did, but from what they made you believe about yourself. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending it's fine when it's not. Then he stood, walked over, and rested a hand on my shoulder. You're home now, he said quietly. And no one's taking that from you. And I believed him. Because for the first time, he wasn't just saying it, he meant it. The next morning, we were sitting across from a lawyer. Her name was Laurette Sharpsuit, sharper eyes, and a voice that didn't waste a single word. Dad told her everything. How I'd been left behind. The false accusations. The fire report showing faulty wiring, no foul play, nothing suspicious. Then he said it, clear and steady. I want full custody. My son's not going back there. Laura turned to me. Caleb, are you afraid to return to your mother's home? Yes, I said. Just that. Nothing more. And that was enough. She nodded once, pulled out her file, and started the paperwork right then and there. Filed for an emergency hearing. It was scheduled for the following week. Back home, Dad turned into a machine. Focused. Calm. All in. He didn't bring up Mom or Richard again. Didn't rant. Didn't dwell. He just made sure I ate. Made sure I slept. Checked in often, but never hovered. And the silence in that apartment, the same silence that once felt heavy, now felt like safety. I didn't expect to hear from Mom. And of course, I didn't. But Richard? Yeah, he finally made his move. It was a Friday night. Dad and I were stretched out on the couch, half watching something forgettable on TV. The room was quiet, just the hum of the screen and the soft rustle of a snack bag. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message lit up. It wasn't you. I know that. He's lying. I sat up straight. Who is this? I texted back. Evan. My stepbrother. The older one. The quiet kid who hardly ever spoke, always polite, always careful, always with his eyes on the floor. What came next nearly made me drop the phone. Screenshots. A folder named Caleb Behavioral Profile. Inside, pages of fake reports. Fabricated incidents. Claims of violent behavior. Even a phony diagnosis for some disorder I'd never even heard of. All of it looked official, like it belonged in a case file, not something cooked up at a kitchen table by a man with too much time and too little soul. Then came a voice memo. I hit play. It was Richard's voice, smooth, confident, and cold. If this goes south, I'll just use the file. No one's going to believe a kid who's been unstable. Especially not one we left behind. Hell, even his mom doesn't question it. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. Then I handed the phone to Dad. He listened once, jaw tightening, and stood up without a word. Walked straight to his desk, hit print, and started collecting everything into a neat stack. This goes to Laura first thing in the morning, he said. This isn't manipulation anymore. This is premeditated. A few seconds later, another message from Evan popped up. I don't feel safe here. But I couldn't let him do this to you. That was it. And suddenly everything made sense. The fog lifted. The doubt, the guilt, the confusion, gone. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. This wasn't some messy family misunderstanding. This was a setup. And now, we had proof. Court isn't anything like what you see on TV. There's no dramatic music, no shouting matches, no gasps from the crowd. It's quiet. But not the good kind of quiet. It's the kind that crawls under your skin. Every shuffle of paper sounds like a gunshot. Every cough echoes like thunder. And your heartbeat, you can hear it pounding in your ears. We got to the courthouse early. Too early. Laura met us in a small side room, spreading everything out, the fake reports, the screenshots, the voice memo. She was calm. Deadly calm. Like someone who already knew how this was going to end, just waiting for the judge to catch up. This is strong, Laura said, flipping through the papers one last time. But remember, family court doesn't always make sense. Don't expect drama. Just stay calm, answer clearly, and let me do the rest. I nodded, wiping my sweaty palms on my jeans. Then they called us in. Forget what you've seen in movies. There were no towering ceilings, no polished wood, no cinematic lighting. Just a tired judge with half-slipped glasses, a dull gray carpet, and silence so thick you could choke on it. Mom sat across from us. Stone-faced. Not a flicker of emotion. Richard didn't show. Said he wasn't a legal guardian. Coward. Laura stood and laid it all out, clear, clean, surgical. She started from the beginning, how I'd been left behind, how the fire was pinned on me before anyone even knew the cause. Then she dropped the hammer, the fake behavioral file, the forged documents, and the voice memo of Richard bragging about it as a backup plan if things went south. The judge didn't say much. She just sat there, tapping her pen against her notes. Then she looked up, straight at Mom. And for the first time in years, I saw her squirm. Did you know about this file? The judge asked, her voice calm but cutting. Mom looked down, eyes darting anywhere but forward. No, I didn't create it. That's not what I asked. I didn't ask for it to be made, she said, her voice small. But you didn't challenge it either, Laura said smoothly. No anger. Just precision. Every word landing like a strike. You let your husband tell the police that your son, a 15-year-old boy, might have committed arson. And even after the fire department cleared him, you stood by and said nothing. You let that lie live. Mom didn't answer. Didn't argue. Didn't even look up. She just sat there, eyes blank, mouth tight. Like someone watching the fire all over again. Only this time, she wasn't even trying to put it out. The judge sighed and scribbled something on her pad before looking up. Then her eyes landed on me. Caleb, she said. Do you feel safe in your mother's home? I didn't even pause. No, I said. Not with Richard there. And not with her letting him lie for her. You could feel it hit. The room shifted, like the weight that had been sitting on my chest finally slid off and landed somewhere else. The judge straightened her glasses, glanced between all of us, and gave her ruling without ceremony. Until a full custody evaluation can be completed, I'm granting temporary full custody to the father, effective immediately. The mother is to have no unsupervised contact with the minor. Mr. Mercer, she nodded toward Dad, you may proceed with your petition for permanent custody. Mom didn't react. Didn't argue. Didn't even blink. She just gave this small, tired nod like she'd seen the verdict coming a mile away and didn't have the strength to fight it anymore. Outside the courtroom, Dad finally exhaled. It was like he'd been holding his breath since the hearing started. That's step 1, he said quietly. I looked up at him. What's step 2? He didn't even think about it. We make sure this never happens again. We never heard from her. No calls. No texts. No apology. Nothing. After the hearing, it was like she peeled herself right out of my life and never looked back. And it wasn't just because she wasn't allowed to. The judge had said no unsupervised contact, not no contact at all. She could have sent a letter. Left a voicemail. Something. Anything. But she didn't. Not even to pretend. Not even to lie and make it sound like she cared. For the first few days, I kept checking my phone. Too much. Way more than I'd ever admit. Some small, stubborn part of me, that last quiet corner that still believed she might care, kept waiting for her to fight for me. Not in court. Not with lawyers. Just with words. Something real. I wanted her to say I mattered. That she missed me. That I hadn't been so easy to forget. But the silence stayed. Thick. Cold. Final. And in that silence, something finally clicked. She hadn't just failed me. She hadn't even tried. It wasn't that she couldn't protect me. It was that she chose not to. Dad noticed. One evening, I was in the kitchen, staring down at my phone like maybe it would eventually say something different. He leaned against the counter, crossed his arms, and said quietly, "You're not gonna hear from her." I didn't say anything. She would have reached out by now if she wanted to, he went on. But she didn't. She made her choice. She picked her side. I know, I said. And I did. But that didn't make it hurt any less. Because there's this moment, and anyone who's ever been betrayed will understand, when the truth finally catches up to you. They were never who you thought they were. She wasn't a good mom who just messed up. She wasn't someone lost or overwhelmed. She was someone who wanted a new life. And I just didn't fit into it. A week later, Dad and I had to go back to the house. There were papers to pick up, a few of my things still boxed up in the garage. We planned it carefully. Made sure Mom and Richard wouldn't be there. Dad coordinated with Laura to keep it quiet, no accidental run-ins. Even so, walking up to that house felt like stepping into someone else's story. The porch light was still flickering, same as always. It had done that for years, and nobody ever fixed it. The wind chimes that used to hang by the door, the ones Mom loved, were gone. Probably packed up or tossed out. I stood there for a second, just staring at the door. Half expecting it to open on its own and let me in. "You okay?" Dad asked gently. I nodded. But the truth? I wasn't okay. Not even close. We stepped inside, and the smell hit me, smoke mixed with fresh paint. Like someone tried to cover a wound instead of heal it. A cover-up, not a clean slate. Neither of us said much. We grabbed what we came for, papers, boxes, and turned to leave. Simple. Efficient. Numb. But as I was walking out, something stopped me. On the mantel right where our old family photo used to sit, the one with me, Mom, and Dad when I was 10, was a new picture. Evan and Noah. Just them. No trace of me. Like I'd never existed there at all. That night, I cried. Harder than I had in years. But when the tears ran dry, I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. And something in me finally went still. Not peace. Not closure. Just understanding. She had erased me. So I let go of the version of her I'd been holding on to. The one who might someday come back. The one who never really existed. After the hearing, Dad didn't just bring me back to his apartment. He brought me home. And he made space for me, real space. The first thing he did was clear out his office. "It's yours now," he said. Simple. No speech. No conditions. He didn't ask if I wanted it. He just knew. He saw it, how much I needed a room that was actually mine. We painted the walls together. Picked furniture that didn't look like leftovers from someone else's life. He let me choose everything, the bedding, the lamp, even the rug. I asked for a lock on the door. He didn't question it. Just installed it. And that first night sleeping there? No nightmares. First time in months. But he didn't stop there. He got me transferred to a new school, closer to his place. Told me there was no reason to stay tied to a district that already did its damage. He handled everything, the forms, the meetings, all of it. Just said, "You focus on what's next." So I did. I started thinking about the future again. I applied to college, not just any college, but the one. The one I'd been dreaming about for years. Out of state. Far enough to feel like a clean start. Close enough that I wasn't running away, just moving forward. And I didn't tell Mom. Not because I forgot. Because she never asked. No text. No email. No message asking where I was, how school was going, what I planned next. It was like I'd been erased. She didn't just let me go. She deleted me. Then one afternoon, it came, the envelope. Thick. Official. Heavy. I opened it slowly, hands shaking. Read the first line 3 times before it sank in. "We are pleased to inform you." I was in. Dad saw me standing in the kitchen, frozen, holding the letter like it might vanish if I breathed wrong. He didn't even ask what it said. Just walked over, read it over my shoulder, and put a steady hand on my back. "You earned that," he said. "I'm proud of you." Then, like it was nothing, he added, "I've been saving since you were in kindergarten. We've got it covered." I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded. The tears didn't come until later, after he'd gone to bed, after the apartment went still. I sat on my new bed, in my own room, in a place that finally felt like mine. It hit me all at once. The stillness. The safety. The fact that I wasn't just tolerated, I was wanted. And I cried. Not out of sadness. Just release. A few weeks before the move, Dad helped me pack. He rented the van, loaded every box himself, went down the checklist like he was prepping for a NASA launch. When we pulled up to the dorm, he didn't make a speech or try to turn it into some Hallmark goodbye. He just looked me in the eye and said, "If you need anything, doesn't matter when, you call me." Got it? I got it, I said. Right before he left, he handed me a small, folded envelope. I didn't open it until later, after unpacking, when I found it tucked between my notebooks. Inside was a short, handwritten note. "You always belonged somewhere. I'm just glad I could finally give you the space to get there." 2 years went by. Silence. No calls. No emails. No half-hearted "how have you been" messages. It was like I'd never existed. But it didn't hurt the way it used to. By then, I'd stopped expecting anything. Dad and I stayed close. He visited on holidays, showed up for birthdays, helped me move out during breaks. Sent the same text every finals week. "Don't forget to eat real food." He showed up. Always. That spring, while I was finishing finals and thinking about summer plans, Dad came to visit. We were sitting in my dorm, him on one bed, me on the other, when I noticed something in his face. That look he only got when he had something big to say. He didn't ease into it. "Richard's under investigation," he said. "Real estate fraud. Money laundering. Fake shell companies, the whole thing. It's bad." I sat up straighter. "Wait, what? How do you know?" "My lawyer's involved in part of it," he said. "She recognized the name and gave me a heads up. Technically, he's still your ex-stepfather." My heart started to pound. "Is he in jail?" "Not yet," Dad said. "But there's a warrant. They've been building the case for months." He tried to skip town. But before that, he paused. He made a move. He leaned forward, voice low. "He pressured your mom to sign over the lake house, the one she inherited from her parents. Used every trick in the book. Charm, guilt, threats." I clenched my jaw. "Why that house?" "Because it's worth a lot," Dad said. And by that point, it wasn't just about money. He was trying to move assets fast, maybe to settle debts, maybe to buy time, maybe just to run. My stomach twisted. "Did she give it to him?" "No," Dad said. "She stalled. Dragged it out. Told him she wasn't ready to sign anything." He hesitated. Then quietly added, "That's when he snapped." I leaned forward, holding my breath. "He got nasty," Dad said. "Started calling her weak. Said she was just like you, ungrateful, difficult, impossible to reason with." That hit harder than I expected. Even after everything, hearing my name come out of Richard's mouth still felt toxic. "He told her she'd wasted his time," Dad went on. "Said he gave her years and got nothing in return. Called her dead weight." I swallowed hard. "And then?" "He disappeared," Dad said. "Took a bag, maybe some cash, maybe fake ID, no one knows. The lawyers think he bolted to avoid charges." He exhaled slowly. "No trace since." I didn't say anything. Just sat there, letting it sink in. "Your mom never reported it," Dad said after a while. "Didn't want to deal with it, I guess. But from what I've heard, she's unraveling." Their relationship was already falling apart. This just finished the job. I didn't ask how she was holding up. Didn't ask if she'd mentioned me. I didn't need to. Because by then, something had settled inside me, a truth I didn't have to keep revisiting. Richard hadn't just tried to control a household. He'd tried to erase everything that didn't follow his rules. And Mom? She stood beside him while he did it. Until he turned on her too. "She protected the house," I said quietly. "Yeah," Dad replied. "She did. Just not her son." He didn't say anything to that. Didn't need to. It happened on a Tuesday. I was back at school after summer break, folding laundry in my dorm when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, not expecting much. And then I saw it. A message. From a number I hadn't seen in over 2 years. Caleb. I know I have no right to reach out. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. I just stared at the screen. No panic. No rush of emotion. Just stillness. A few minutes later, another message. I didn't know how to fix things. After he left. I've been trying to make sense of everything. I know I failed you. I know I chose him. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to hear it. She never said his name. Just he, like Richard, was some shadow she wanted to forget. A bad dream that left ashes behind. I didn't reply. Not right away. Later that week, I told Dad. We were eating pizza on the couch, TV on, same as always. He didn't even blink. What did she say? That she's sorry. He nodded slowly. Do you believe her? I paused. Really thought about it. I think she's sorry now, I said. But I don't think it's about what she did to me. I think she's sorry because her life fell apart. He nodded again, calm as ever. You know you don't owe her anything, right? Yeah, I said. And I meant it. But she didn't stop. A week later, another message. This time an email, longer, wordier. She wrote about Richard. How he'd changed. How she was scared. How she convinced herself that staying quiet was the same thing as keeping peace. She said she thought she was protecting me. Said she thought silence was strength. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you by trying to keep everything calm, she wrote. I see it now. I know I failed you. It read more like a confession than an apology. But it didn't change the facts. When the police turned their questions on me, she said nothing. When Richard spun his lies, she let them sit. And when I left, when I disappeared from her life entirely, she let me stay gone. Not a whisper. Not a word. 2 full years. And now that everything had fallen apart? Now she remembered me? I didn't feel anger. Didn't feel pity. What I felt was colder, cleaner. Like a door closing. Because by then, I had rebuilt from scratch. I'd stitched myself together without her voice in my ear. I'd found peace in places she never bothered to look. I'd become someone solid, not because she helped, but because she didn't. I didn't need to hate her. I didn't need to forgive her either. She just wasn't part of the story anymore. Still, I wrote back one short reply. I hope you find what you're looking for. But I've already found my peace. Then I powered down my phone, stepped outside, and walked. The air was cool. The city was quiet. And for the first time in years, my breath felt easy. The last semester disappeared in a blink. No meltdowns. No anxiety humming under my ribs. Just school, work, and people who knew me for me. Not as a problem, not a warning sign, not a ghost in someone else's house. Graduation came. Dad was there, standing in the back of the crowd, clapping like he'd known all along I'd make it, and now the world finally caught up with him. Afterward, he handed me a small envelope. No speech. No fuss. Inside was a single key. To the condo, he said. It's not big, but it's yours if you want it. I'm moving in with Megan, so figured you could use a place to start something new. I didn't say anything at first. Because what do you say when someone gives you what you didn't even know how to ask for? He didn't give me a gift. He gave me space. The kind you build a future in. I moved in a week later. Nothing fancy. Small kitchen. Street parking. The kind of place where the fridge hums too loud and the faucet drips unless you twist it just right. But it was mine. I unpacked slowly. Bought a second-hand couch. Overcooked pasta more times than I'll admit. Hung prints on the walls, not because they matched, but because they felt like home. And every night, I'd turn off the lights, lock the door, and lie in bed in the quiet. And feel safe. Not watched. Not measured. Not erased. Safe. Richard vanished the way men like him always do. No big explosion. Just silence. The case dragged on. People said he might be overseas, somewhere far, somewhere shady. Eventually, folks stopped asking. He became a rumor. A shadow. The kind of man you stop chasing because all that's left is wreckage and it's already done. A year after graduation, a letter came. her handwriting on the front. I didn't open it. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need anything inside it to keep moving forward. Some doors don't need to be slammed shut. Some just stay closed. I already knew what that letter held: explanations, maybe. Regrets, definitely. And maybe even a little love. But love that only shows up after the damage is done? That's not love. That's guilt wearing a costume, trying to pass for something it's not. So let me lay it out plain and simple. I never got the apology I used to pray for. I didn't get the closure I thought I needed to move on. But I ended up with something better. I got out. I walked away and started building a life that didn't require me to prove I deserved to have one. And if you're reading this, if you're sitting in a house that feels more like a prison than a home, wondering if love is supposed to feel like silence, or guilt, or making yourself smaller just to keep the peace, then hear me when I say this. You are not too much. You are not impossible to love. And you are not crazy for wanting something better. Sometimes, the people who should protect us are the first to vanish when things get hard. But their silence, that's not on you. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means it's time to stop waiting for them to say the things you've been aching to hear. I'm 23 now. I still flinch when someone raises their voice too fast. I still tense up around people who smile too wide, too soon. And yeah, there are nights when I lie awake and wonder if she ever really saw me. The real me. But most nights? I sleep. And let me tell you, that's something I don't take for granted anymore. Not one bit. If I've learned anything through all of this, it's this. You don't need anyone's permission to protect your peace. Family isn't just blood. Family is who stays. It's the ones who show up, especially when things get ugly. It's the people who look at you when you're falling apart and still say, you matter. You're worth it. So don't measure your worth by who left you behind. Measure it by who stood up for you. And by how fiercely you stood up for yourself when nobody else did. You'll make it through. And one day, without even realizing it, you'll stop surviving and start living. And when that moment comes, you won't look back. You'll just exhale. And for the first time in a long, long time, you'll feel free.